Hi guys, this is your girl Wakeji Kamore and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. We're going to continue reading the book of 2 Kings chapter 4, which I said we're going to read in three parts. Today we are reading the second part, which can be found from verse 8 all the way to verse 37. Please pause this recording and read the book of 2 Kings chapter 4 from verse 8 all the way to verse 37 before you continue, so that then you understand what it is that we are talking about. If you're here for the very first time, please subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so that you'd never miss any recording. So today's story is the story of Elisha and the Shunamite woman. Shunamite woman. Anyway, so let me tell you about this woman. This woman was a wealthy woman, and she lived in a place called the town of Shunem. That's why she's called the Shunamite woman. We don't even know her name. Her name is not even important, but the thing that she did, like the lessons that we learned from her, are gold, to be honest. So she's wealthy, and every time that Elisha comes to this town, Elisha comes to her house, and he has a meal. Sometimes he sleeps over, and then he continues to do his business. So she goes to her husband and says, how about we just build a small room for Elisha on the roof? Unajua rooftops zilikuwa zinabamba your time. So hapo kwa roof, we can build like a canesque of some sort, and then we can furnish it with a bed and a table and a chair and a lamp. Unajua like a retreat Airbnb sort of. So that's what they did. So that every time Elisha would come by, he would have a place to actually go relax and sleep and have at least have a home in this town of Shunem. So they did exactly that. So one day, Elisha returned to Shunem, and he was taken to this room that they had built, that this woman and her husband had built. And then he was like, oh, this is so kind. And we appreciate Elisha was very appreciative of the concern that she had shown. And then she said, he said, what can we do? What can I do for you? I can put in a good word for you to the king or to the commander of the army. But she was like, no, it's fine. My family takes good care of me. In short to say, imagine I don't need the favor to have good, I'm okay. I'm wealthy, they were wealthy, they were good. She was like, I don't need anything, I'm good. So Elisha asks Gehazi. Gehazi was like a servant of Elisha. Ask Gehazi, what can we do for her? They're having a personal meeting. Tufanyie nini mama? She's been so nice. She's built me a whole KSQ on rooftop. My goodness, this is so good. What can we do for her? Then Gehazi replied, she doesn't have a son, and her husband is an old man. So Elisha says, call her back. And Elisha told him, when the woman returned, Elisha said to her, next year at a time like this, you'll be holding a son in your arm. You'll be holding a son in your arm. And then she says, no, my Lord, she cried, oh man of God, don't deceive me and get my hopes up like that. I feel like this woman probably had gone through an experience. Maybe she had tried so much to get a son, but she was she got her hope up every time. We don't know whether she had children or just that she didn't have a son. Maybe she had daughters. I honestly don't know whether she had daughters, but she didn't have a son. And she was like, don't get my hopes high. Maybe she had hopes, the way you hope for something, then you really think you're close, and then the door's shut, and then you're broken, and then you get your hopes high again. So she was like, don't do that. I don't want to go back to that space. I don't want to go back to that season. I am content with the fact that I don't have a son. Niko tu sawa. Even if it's a desire that she had gotten content with the fact that she didn't have a son. She was like, don't get my hopes high. But sure enough, the woman became pregnant, and at that time, the following year, she had a son, just as Elisha had said. All right, so one day, of course, the boy has grown and he's become bigger. So now he goes out with his father to work in the fields, when they're harvesting. So he goes out with his father and his servants to work in the fields, and he gets a serious migraine. The boy is in serious pain. So he's like, my head hurts. So his father said to one of the servants, carry him home to his father. So the servant took the boy and took him to his mother. And his mother held him on his laps. But around noontime, the boy died. So the boy has died. Oh my goodness. So what is she going to do? So she carries him up and laid him up on the bed. That room that they had built for Elisha. Alienda kampeleka hapo. She laid him on the bed and she closed the door. And she was like, now, naenda kutafuta huyu Elisha aniambie what's what. So she sent one of the servants and said, get me a donkey and I want to hurry and see the man of God and come right back. So of course, the servant is asking, or even the husband is asking, why are you going? Today is like moon festival. It's not a Sabbath. Like, why are you going to see the man of God? But the woman says, this is in verse 23, it says, it will be all right. First me, I'm like, where are you getting the energy to say it will be all right and your son has died? The only son you have is dead. And you have locked him somewhere in an upper room somewhere. And you're here saying everything is going to be all right. Wow. So she saddled on the donkey and went to the servant, and she hurried and said, don't slow down until I tell you to. So as she approached the man of God at Mount Carmel, Elisha saw her in the distance, and he said to her, Gehazi, look, that's a woman from Shunem, and she's coming. Run out to her and see whether everything is fine. So the Gehazi went and said, is everything fine? Is your husband okay? Is your child okay? And the woman said, yes, everything is fine. That's what she said to Gehazi. She was like, me, I want to meet Elisha. Hizi stories za Gehazi, sijui interns, sijui assistant, PA, sitaki. I want to meet Elisha himself. And until I meet Elisha himself, I'm going to be saying nothing else. I'm just going to be saying everything is fine and everything is going to be all right. So she came all the way to the mountain where the man of God was at, which is the mountain of Carmel. And then she just began to hold on to his feet. She was weeping. She was just like, where? Things are bad. And Gehazi is trying to push her away from Elisha, but Elisha is like, leave her alone. She's deeply troubled, but the Lord has not told me what it is. Then she said, I like what she says when she gets to Elisha. Yani she now can be real. She has gotten to where she wanted to go. She now can be real. She says, did I ask you for a son, my Lord? And didn't I say, don't deceive me and get my hopes up? This reminds me of some conversations I have with God. And I'm just like, Sasa wewe, God, did I ask you for 4 apartments? Did I ask you for 4 apartments? But now you have given me 4 apartments. Seen a guest, seen anything. Did I ask you for this business? Did I ask you? Like sometimes you just feel like, God, actually, you've put me on this mountain and now you have left me here. That's how it feels. And I like the fact that when she got to Elisha, she now could speak her mind. She could say what was in her heart. She was broken and she was just like, now I can say what I want to say. Did I ask you for a son, my Lord? And didn't I say, don't deceive me and get my hopes up? Then Elisha said to Gehazi, get ready to travel. Take my staff and go. Don't talk to anyone along the way. Go quickly and lay the staff on the child's face. But the Shunamite woman said, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I won't go home unless you go with him. Usinitumie PA, usinitumie intern, usinitumie angel, wewe kuja mwenyewe. Wewe ndio uliniambia nitapata huyu kijana. And you want to start sending Gehazi? No. You yourself come. So of course Gehazi hurried ahead to go and do whatever Elisha had told him. And then when he got there, he laid the staff on the child's face, and nothing happened. So there was no sign, and Elisha arrived. And because he saw that Gehazi alijaribu kufanya zile vitu alifanya and it didn't work, so he was like, okay, fine, let me do what it is that I need to do here. Let me tell you, let me just read for you that part of how this boy finally came to life, because it feels very awkward. Like if you saw this happening somewhere in a video, you would probably be like, isn't it church gani? Aki honestly, even me, if I saw this happening somewhere in a video, I'd be like, isn't zile church tunaambiwa tuache kufuata? But this is exactly what Elisha did. So it says, when Elisha arrived, the child was indeed dead, lying there on the prophet's bed. He went in alone and shut the door behind him and prayed to the Lord. Then he lay down on the child's body, placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, his hands on the child's hands. Can you imagine that? If we imagine, when mtoto wako, I don't know how old the child was. I'm imagining maybe he was a teenager or something like that. So now Elisha is on top of this boy with his mouth on top of the dead child's mouth. His eyes, aki, my goodness, it looks so ridiculous. Me, if I saw something like that, even in a video, me, I'll be like, false prophets. False prophets. And then he stretched out on him. He stretched out on him. The child's body began to grow warm again. Elisha got up. He walked back and forth across the room once. Then he stretched himself out again on the child. And this time the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Then Elisha summoned Gehazi and says, call the child's mother, he said. And when she came in, Elisha said, take your son. She fell at his feet and bowed before him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Then she took her son in her hands and carried him downstairs. I don't even know how old this guy, because I'm imagining maybe it's not a teenager, because man kubeba teenager pia inaweza kuwa ngumu. So he probably was a little bit younger, this boy. But can you imagine that happening? If you saw that happening in a video somewhere, you'd be like, false prophets, sasa ona zile makanisa, what are these? But that is exactly how Elisha was used by God to bring this son back to life. Anyway, there's so many lessons that we can learn from this Shunamite woman. First, we learn to share generously, to offer hospitality, and to do it graciously, to use whatever it is that you have, that God has given you in plenty, to be a blessing to someone else, to be a blessing to the kingdom of God. As she was wealthy, and she decided, let's build an Airbnb for this prophet, so that every time he comes here, he has a place to stay. So whatever it is that God has placed in your hand, use it to bless others. Use it to advance the kingdom of God. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, and the greatest lesson. I remember when I learned this lesson, rather when I read this story and got this perspective, or got this revelation of how positive this woman is. You guys, put yourself in her shoes. You have not had a son, I don't know for how long, because it says that her husband was old. So she must also have been a little bit older. She can't have been like young, 20s. If her husband was old, she probably was just slightly older. Or slightly younger than the husband. And then this guy comes and says, you're going to get a son. Then you get a son. Then the son dies. And then when you are in that space of your son has died, you can afford to say everything is all right. Everything is fine. Like every person she met with on the way, when she was going to look for Elisha, she said everything is fine. Everything is going to be all right. Everything is okay. Me, I don't know where you mount. I don't know. Like, my goodness. Me hata nikigongwa tu na meza, I will probably start saying all the wrong things. If one thing goes wrong in the factory, if one thing goes wrong in the workshop, I'll probably start saying all the negative. But just the fact that this woman remained positive, not just in her mind. Let me tell you, it is very easy to remain positive and to say positive things when things are going great. But this woman had just lost her most precious son, the only son that she had. But every person she met along the way to going to look for Elisha, she said something positive. So my question is, or my challenge for you is, when you encounter a challenge, every person that you find on the way, what do you say? Are you going to say, oh my God, things are hard, hii dunia ni mbaya, hii economy ni mbaya, huyu Ruto sijui anafanya nini? And you're just complaining. I pray for you, and I pray for myself as well, that we would have such great faith, that we will be able to say positive things, even in the midst of our biggest challenges, even in the midst of the worst things that could happen to us, that we will still speak life, that we will still speak something positive. And then the next thing is that when she got to Elisha, and Elisha is like a representative of when you get to now go to the throne of God, when you get to the press to sit with God and to tell him what it is that you feel. It is okay to pour out your heart as it is. Sasa unajua God unaweza mwambia chochote, unaweza mwambia God, acha nikwambie mimi hata sijui nani alikutuma akakwambia unifanyie hizi vitu zote, unilete hizi vitu zote, sasa nimekwama. Like you can actually go and pour out your heart to God. And I find that so great that you're able to do that you're able to go to your Father and just tell him however it is that you feel, without having to censor you, to now sound nice, to polish your prayers so that you sound nice to God. God already knows how it is that you feel. So just go out there and pour out your heart to God. And then remain positive before you even pour out your heart to God, and remain positive even after you pour out your heart to God. That's a challenge from this part of this chapter, and I do hope that you will take it as a challenge, and that it will challenge you to have great faith, and it will challenge you to remain positive and to only speak positive things, even in the midst of the worst thing that could be happening in your life. This is your girl Wakeji Kamore, and this has been Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. See you tomorrow.